Um, and you can actually see me for once. Sorry about that. Sorry that you can see me. Also, sorry that I probably look horrible. I don't know if there's a lot I can do about that. I actually have done what I think is. Hold on, wait. Now you can hear me. Right? Yeah. I've actually done what is probably a very super healthy thing to do, and that is mute the camera completely so I can't see myself. I looked at myself before I started, and was like, do I look okay? No, not really, but it's not. We'll call this a vulnerable. This is a vulnerable video, more so than, I'm not being disheveled. I'm being real and honest and open. So that's what's happening here. I don't have anything particularly heavy to talk about prepared, so that's not what I'm gonna be doing today. I'm actually, the only reason why I'm even recording to begin with is just because I'm bored and I don't have anything else to do. And it's Monday after Christmas, so everybody is off work today, and I was feeling a little crowded in the living room. Hold on, I took my glasses off like an idiot. Something that I've noticed recently is that, actually two things I've noticed. One thing I've noticed is that recently I started taking ADHD medication, and while I don't feel a lot different, I have noticed that I'm behaving a little bit different, and I'm kind of fascinated by that. I don't feel a ton different though, but I've been doing things like, I have a lot of trouble with voicing my concerns. Like if there's something that bothers me about anything, just anything that is bothering me or annoying me, I tend to really keep it inside a lot, and I internalize it, and then usually what ends up happening is that I keep it inside for a long enough time that I end up just kind of exploding. And I didn't necessarily think that was a part of ADHD, but I guess maybe it is, because now that I'm taking the medication, it hasn't been a gigantic shift in my personality, but I have noticed that I have been not only voicing concerns that I have, but also doing things to mitigate those concerns. Like if I'm experiencing a little bit of heartburn right now. Before, if I was experiencing heartburn, I would think to myself, I'm experiencing heartburn, and then I would do nothing about it. But now, if the heartburn comes back and it starts to become uncomfortable, I'm probably going to go get some milk or bread or something like that, or maybe some, Rolaids, whatever it is, and just like solve it, right? Just solve the problem instead of letting it fester. And that's something that I've really had a lot of trouble with my entire life, is just like stuff bothers me, but I wait for it to reach critical mass before I do anything about it. And I've noticed that, there's been like a 20% change in my personality, in that sense that I've started to voice my concerns about things. If something is genuinely bothering me, I'll say something about it, or I'll do before I get to that like really critical point of just like exploding and just like letting out my frustrations on another person in a way that's unhealthy. I've been, like speaking things out loud and being tactful about it, but still being like firm about things, and that's a little bit new for me. That's a little bit different. Like that's definitely something that has come out of just the last few weeks since I've got this new medication. I've noticed like a tangible difference in the way that I've been doing things and handling situations. I would say that it's still a mild difference, even though it feels like I'm taking a lot of meds. I would say that I am still having a mild response. There still could be, there's room for improvement still, but that is definitely, that's a tangible difference that I've actually seen in my life from taking medication, psychopharmacological medication, and that's never really happened before. Usually it's really subtle, and this has not been as subtle. It's been more noticeable. So I'm really proud of that. But part of it is that I really don't like being crowded, and for some reason, I'm gonna have to have a conversation with my parents, I think, and tell them, like sometimes you guys crowd me, like physically crowd me a little bit too much, because there are just some days where everybody, like this house is not small. It's I don't know what the square footage of it is, but it's not small, but everybody just for some reason likes to crowd in the same room sometimes, like when everybody is off at the same time. And it drives me nuts. It's like this is my spot. I'm one of those people. I'm kind of particular in that way, where I'm like, this is my spot. This is my spot. This is where I want to be. And I'm feeling really claustrophobic right now. Everybody is crowding me in here. There's like, how many different rooms are there in this house? I'm trying to think. Like, you have the living room and the kitchen. They're different rooms, but they're connected. Actually, there was that's not a dining room. I don't know what I would call that. There's like a sort of a nook between the living room and the kitchen. So that's kind of 3 different spaces, but I'm going to call them 2 spaces. And then there's, on the other side of that, there's the dining room, and then there is what we call the living room, but is actually more of like a sitting room or something, like a foyer. And then there's the garage, which you could theoretically also use as a room, even though we don't. We probably should, because it's a lot of wasted space, in my opinion. Because we don't put the cars in there. We have a driveway for a reason, so we should probably make better use of that space. It's just kind of a storage space. And then there's the second floor, which is what I'm on right now. I have a room. This is an office. And then my parents have their room. And then there's a bonus room, a huge bonus room over here. And so there's all these different rooms, and I decided to come up here and stream because I was feeling pretty claustrophobic, and I thought, maybe I should just move if I'm feeling so claustrophobic. But the problem is like I have my little spot, and I have my computer and stuff like that, and I feel compelled to stay there. One, because it's my favorite spot and it has my favorite chair, which is way more comfortable than all the other chairs. And two, whenever I do that, my parents are, they don't like that. They don't like it. They don't like it when I move. They don't like it when I go to another room. They take it personally if I just like up and leave. We're gonna have to have a conversation about that, because that's not. I don't think that that's okay. I don't think that's healthy. But that's the kind of thing that I feel like I can handle now that I'm taking these meds. Before I was taking the meds, those kinds of situations were really difficult for me to handle. I really had a really hard time, and like personal relationships that I had suffered because of that. I wasn't good at voicing my concerns when they happened. I would voice them, a month or two down the line, when it's just become like critical mass. And an interesting side effect of that has been that people think I'm grumpier now than I used to be, because I'm complaining about stuff more than I was before. I'm doing it in a healthier way, I think, because I'm if there's something bothering me, I complain about it right away, and I try to do it as gently as possible. But before, I was complaining less, but my complaints were much more volatile. I would come out and just be like, "Hey, what's the matter with you? Why do you always do that?" The phrasing was different, the rhetoric was different. Be like, "Why are you doing this to me?" It would just be like a much more just like volatile thing. And so I'm actually very grateful that I've seen that change, because it lets me know, like, oh, that the way that you used to be was not normal, and you have now, through psychopharmacological medication, you have seen genuine improvement in your health and in the interactions of your relationships. And just to see like tangible proof of concept is totally a new thing. Totally a new thing. And it's something that has informed my decisions going forward. It's like, oh, I need to pursue, mental health is a tough thing, and especially if you have ADHD, you have a hard time pursuing projects anyway. And if your mental health is a project, then it can be really difficult, unless somebody literally like picks you up and carries you through the process. Maybe even against your will. It can actually be very difficult for some people, particularly if you have severe ADHD, to take care of yourself. It can be really difficult for some people with some conditions to take care of themselves. Speaking of that, I think I need some heartburn stuff. Maybe the water will help. Does water help? It does. Does it help enough? Should I risk it? I don't like taking Tums, because I've had a lot of heartburn over the course of my life. I feel like I've got it handled really well, because usually if it gets really bad, I'll just like drink a glass of milk or something. And usually a glass of milk is enough. Or eat bread. Eating bread helps a lot. But we don't have any bread. Also, eating bread is really annoying and frustrating. Dude, it smells kind of weird in here. I don't know what that smell is. I hate smells. Another thing I've realized about myself, I think ADHD medication helps you be more introspective. So because of that, I think I recognized that I'm a little bit addicted to coffee. And when you start off having just drank the coffee, it kind of gives you a natural high and the energy and all that. But then eventually it kind of lets you down again at a certain point. And that's when I get irritable. That's when I get cranky. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what's happening exactly. But it usually means that I have to take like extra good care of my mood during that like 45-minute period, or however long it lasts, probably 45 minutes or maybe less, and take like really good care of myself, because that's when I start to get like really sensitive to everything, like smells. Like I just came in here, like the sun is on me, and it's a little bit annoying because I can feel it on my skin. It's warm in here, it's dusty in here. I just came from downstairs. It's really humid downstairs. It's okay in here. It's not humid in here, but it's really humid downstairs. And all of this stuff that, like, normally my brain would just be able to tune out. I'm not tuning it out. I'm not tuning any of it out. It's all hitting me, and it's all, like, I can't process it correctly for some reason, and it's really like it just gets under my skin in a really profound way. So, and that's something that's, those sensory issues, sensory processing issues, that's really common with ADHD also. And for me, it's particularly bad during certain parts of the day. And I haven't quite figured out exactly what's happening. But it correlates with sort of the letdown on the other side of like a caffeine boost. I'm gonna drink this milk now. Have fun. I wish I could edit these things out. If this was YouTube, I could edit these things out, but I can't. You're just gonna have to sit here, listen to me drink milk for the next minute. I also felt like I needed a snack. Alright, let's see how much better we feel now. I don't feel great. It's warm in here, man. Usually if I am feeling kind of and then I consume calories of some kind, like I just did, usually it ends up making me feel pretty sleepy, which it is doing. Actually, you know what? I just realized I had pizza for breakfast this morning. I had pizza for breakfast. And that's my mom's fault. Because she gave it to me. She was like, "You want some pizza?" And I was like, sure. Thinking, I should probably eat something. Not realizing, like, maybe pizza is not the thing to be eating the first thing on a Monday morning. Because that's what I did. I woke up this morning and I ate 2 cold slices of pizza and I drank a coffee. And you are seeing the result. I don't feel 100% great, and it's almost noon. So I don't know how much energy I'm gonna have now. I hate that it's warm in here, but I brought some sugar with me. I've noticed that, sometimes for absolutely no reason at all, my blood sugar just seems to tank. I have no idea. I don't think I have hypoglycemia. My mom does, though, and her symptoms, or at least she thinks she does, now she has diabetes, which I think is the opposite of hypoglycemia. But she used to, when she was my age, she had hypoglycemia, and she has described it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that feels familiar. But I've been tested multiple times, and my blood sugar has always come back normal, like totally normal. That being said, I definitely know that when this is a Dr. Pepper, when I drink Dr. Pepper, if I'm feeling like this, and I drink, I usually have to eat something with it, but when I do that, I feel better, because it just gives you that like sugar boost. Like if you need like a little bit of a boost, I don't know why that's so confusing and weird. Like, what are you supposed to do if you're a caveman? I know when I'm a little bit low on sugar because it tastes really good. Like, this soda tastes really good right now, and that's how I know. That's how I know that I need it. That's how I know that I'm a little bit low. And I have no idea why. Like I said, I've been tested for blood sugar stuff before, and it always comes back totally normal, completely normal. Actually, I think there was one time where it was a little bit low, but it was like, I hadn't eaten in a long time or something. And even then, it was only like a little bit. It tastes really good, though. It's usually a sign. Usually a sign that something's not quite right. No idea why that happens. No idea. But here we are. Hopefully this doesn't give me my heartburn back. That'd be so lame. Basically, my entire life is just a series of chemical experiments in my stomach to try and figure out why I don't feel good. Basically, my entire life. Also, I think that coffee does lower your blood sugar. Or caffeine in general. It's almost been 30 minutes? I've been talking for almost 30 minutes already? How is that possible? If you're still watching this, man, what a trooper. What are you doing with your life? Actually, that's not true because, like, some of this stuff is honestly some of my favorite stuff to watch on the entire internet. I love introspective human stuff because it's kind of the only place you can get it sometimes, you know? Like, for instance, I really like Rhett and Link's podcast, their Ear Biscuits podcast. I really like their podcast because, unlike now, there's two of them and not just one. And so they can sort of bounce off of each other, and they're both really introspective people, and they talk about like really interesting and deep stuff, and they do it in a way that's not too heavy because they're both, you know, comedians at heart, and so they do it in a way that's not too heavy. They have a way of making like heavy sort of concepts and like bringing them into your living room sort of. And so that I really like. I think that that's really underrated. The fact that they're podcasting, it's great. I'm not really much of a podcast guy though, so I'm sure that there's, you know, better podcasts, but it's also like the human element. Like I just like listening to people talk about their lives. You know, if their lives are interesting. Because it sort of gives me something to be like, oh yeah, like that could happen. You know, someone's like, oh, I had to fix the outlet today. You know, it makes me think like, oh yeah, that could be me someday, fixing outlets in my house, or, you know, my neighbor is stealing oranges off of my tree, you know, that kind of thing is really interesting to me because it's just like, it's the kind of, you can't get that anywhere else, you know, unless you specifically go out and make those kinds of friends, which I have a lot of trouble doing for some reason. Every time I go out, you know, I get a lot of negative reactions when I go out and meet people. People just don't seem to like me very much, and I don't know why. Yeah, I have a hard time. I have a hard time meeting people. Or at least I have, up until this point. I don't know why. I try to be as friendly and normal and personable as possible. Like what you're seeing here is, you know, I'm not different. In real life, this is me. You know, so I have a hard time getting to know people on a more sort of personal level at least. I downloaded 2 apps. My therapist a couple weeks ago said that he wanted me to download new dating apps. He said he wanted me to download a couple dating apps and to like get out there or whatever. And so I've been doing that. Let me tell you, that's pretty soul crushing, as I'm sure most of you are aware. That's pretty soul crushing. I mean, it's not because, I mean, on one hand, you know, I have to put myself out there and I have to somehow find a way to market myself without seeming too arrogant. You know, like it's so unnatural to market yourself. Because you always come across as like arrogant or whatever. Or you're afraid. At least, you know, that's what I end up thinking. I get kind of in my head about it, and like, oh, I'm there. No, people aren't gonna like me because, you know, I it's just so unnatural. You know, naturally you want to be as humble as possible, and the people who are humble on the dating apps, you know, that's a disadvantage. But that's not even, you know, that's not the hard part. That's not the soul crushing part. The soul crushing part is the swiping, because you're just like, this is it. Is what I'm thinking. Like, that's how I interact with the like flood of women that I'm getting over the dashboard of the app or whatever you call it. Just like girl after girl after girl after girl after girl, like just a boom, 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 boom. Like it's an assembly line, and everyone is totally different, and it's obvious, and you can see their personality reflected in their profiles and their pictures and everything. And like, it's incredible to me how many of these people I'm like, I would not want to be in the same room with you. You know? Like, that's the soul crushing part. And I'm like, is it just because, like, the people who are on, you know, Tinder, they've just, like, failed in every other aspect of their life, and so they run to Tinder? Is that why? Because I'm just, like, swiping through all of these people, and I'm like, this feels like the bottom of the barrel. And I feel kind of mad at myself for being judgmental, you know? I'm like I'm having this sort of conversation with myself, and like since when did I become since when did I become so judgmental, is what I'm thinking. But, you know, it's in your best interest to be when you're on something like this, when you're, you know, dating. You're supposed to be judgmental. You know, the less judgmental that you are, the more likely that you're going to be taken advantage of in some way. Or end up in a relationship that sucks. Or at least you have to be judgmental, but you have to be judgmental in the right way. And so I was going through just like all of these girls, you know, I put the age range 22 to 30, I think. So like a kind of a narrow range, but, you know, not super narrow. And it was shocking, especially on Tinder. But like I downloaded Tinder and Bumble because I don't know what the best apps are. I just know the ones that I've heard of, and those were just the two ones that I've heard of. And so I'm going through these, and I'm just like, especially Tinder. I'm like, this is the bottom of the barrel. I was thinking to myself, like, I hate these people. I hate them, and they're just pictures, But like the more swiping that I was doing, the more like kind of when I started off, I was actually pretty excited, you know. But like the more swiping that you do, the more that like the algorithm of the app starts sort of sending you the pictures and the profiles of people that were rejected more. They put the good people first, you know what I mean? And so like the more that I swiped, the more that I was like, wow, this is depressing. And in a lot of cases, I couldn't really even put my finger on what it was. Like I swipe right is the good one. I swiped right on some girls that were attractive and some that were less attractive. But I also swiped left on girls that were attractive and girls that were not. Like the obviously the level of attract like the level of like conventionally attractive that they were played a huge role, but it wasn't everything, because there were some very like conventionally very attractive women that I was like, I don't want you anywhere near me. Like it was this immediate like visceral response, and I'm just like, why? What is it about these people? I think it has a lot to do with style. I wonder if it's just because like this is the style of person, like their clothes and their hair and makeup is a big thing. Like that's a big deal. I was like, there's a lot of like, I guess maybe it's also maybe just Greenville. But I'm like, some of y'all are like, you are grown women. And I didn't think that I was a makeup guy. I didn't think I cared about that. But after spending a couple hours swiping through, Tinder, I'm like, guess I am. I didn't know I was, but I'm like, but I was super judgmental about that. And like some, like these are grown women, some of them, and I'm like, they look horrible. Like, what is it about Greenville? I guess it's just and I've noticed that there's definitely an overlap between that and the southern, like the more like I've grown up in the South since I was 9 years old, so there's definitely a overlap between other people who have grown up in the South and just like really like makeup choices that I would not wow, like wow. And it's not, it feels so weird to even think about that and now to talk about it on the internet, but it's something that it I feel like it needs to be talked about. It was that was my experience, and it was an emotional one, because it was like, wow, I feel depressed now. It was depressing because of how I don't know how to articulate, but it was like, I have less options than I thought. Um, I thought that I had more options, but although, to be frank, we're talking about an hour of swiping is like what, 500 people at the most or something. So it's, there's tens of thousands of people in Greenville, but it's like, wow. Like, wow. So yeah, it's really insane. Uh, and it reminds me of like, oh yeah, when I was in college, I was surrounded by hundreds of girls, and I never dated any of them. I mean, there was definitely a fair few that I liked, but I never. I guess everybody's just too busy or something. I'll chalk it up to that. Everybody's just too busy. Um, and when I look back on that, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I can see how that could happen now, because I'm just like swiping through like dozens of girls, and a lot of them I was like, I would not. And I feel bad for them, because I kind of want to tell them that it's like, I like, you come across as really unattractive in some way, but I don't even know how. Because some of them I'm like, I really do think that like makeup is a big part of it, because it's like there's something visceral. I have a visceral response to someone who is conventionally attractive, but they've decided that they need to cover their face almost completely with paint. Like it feels like a mask, and you can't trust somebody in a mask. And so I have this immediate visceral response when I see those profiles of like, this person is probably conventionally attractive. It's hard to tell, but this person is probably conventionally attractive, but they're wearing a mask, and they just have this look on their face. There was a lot of people on the app that I was like, I'm getting like an uncanny valley response to sometimes dozens of girls. There's this like gut reaction of like, don't, that person's a psychopath. Like there's just like, and it makes me think like, are they? Are if you're a psychopath, does that mean you're more likely to want to download Tinder or something? Because like, those are the kinds of questions that I start to ask after having been on there for a while. This is not sponsored by Tinder, guys. But there are some of them, like, it was mind-blowing how many girls there were on there that I was like, you are conventionally attractive, but I would crawl over barbed wire to get away from you. And in a lot of cases, I really couldn't tell you exactly why. I think it is makeup in a lot of cases, but it's also like clothes. Sometimes you're like, man, you look horrible. Like, you look horrible. You think you look you think you look great, but you don't. Like, that's, there's a lot of that, and I feel icky talking about it, because it's not. It just sort of forces you into this headspace where you're extremely judgmental. And I try not to be judgmental just as a person, but I felt like I was forced into it. And now, now what? I feel like the can of worms is open, and I'm never closing it again. Like, I can't close it again. It's over. It's really very... Some of y'all, especially some of y'all Southern girls, like, really, wow, really poor choices, really bad style choices. I don't know what it is about being Southern, but there's a lot of stuff in there, that I'm just like, wow, you look horrible. And they all think they look great. They all think they look great, but they don't. You all look horrible. And maybe it's just, but that's the other thing, is like, maybe it's just because I'm not used to it. Maybe it's literally just like a cultural difference. But I can't explain it. I can't explain it. Something weird is It's like invasion of the body snatchers down here. There's just like, wow, she's cute. She looks fun. She's got a nice smile. She's got, she has a cat. And swipe right. And then like the next one is like, wow, she's attractive, but she looks like she has, probably a severed head of her ex-boyfriend in her trunk. Like that was the gut response. A lot of just like bad pictures of people, of girls drinking with their little girlfriends at like seedy bars, and they're wearing stupid clothes, and they're woo, like a lot of that sort of stuff, which is like, sometimes that's endearing. But for some reason, the way that these particular people are doing it is really far from endearing. And I'm baffled as to why there's dozens upon dozens upon dozens. Maybe it's just, like I said, it's just Tinder. I think maybe I was remiss in choosing that particular one, because that's the tired one. That's the tired dating app. So maybe if it's 2021 and you're still on Tinder, maybe you're just in a weird place in your life anyway, which is, I am too. Obviously, like people are seeing my profile and they're like, what? They're definitely, I guarantee it. People are probably watching this stream and thinking that. But I'm, at the very least, I'm being very open and honest, and trying to move my way through life in the only way that I know how. But a lot of these people, it was just like, they just like reeked of issues, and you're like, why? Like, what is it exactly about this person's profile, this person's picture? Growing up in the South has been a weird thing, because there really are a lot of, it's a weird Southern culture thing, but there's a lot of basic white girls out there in the South that think they are a huge catch, and they're like 2.5, 3 out of 10 at best, but they think that they are a huge catch, fully and completely, but they don't even have like, like they're like they have, their shoulders are hunched forward, and they have like hunchbacks, and they can't, and they wear like the baggiest clothes that you've ever seen, and that's and they're party girl. They think they're party girls, and they go out with their little friends, and they all look like. You see what this has turned me into? I don't feel good about myself right now, but like I feel like this, the only way that I can express my feelings is just like, how do you get to that point? Like it's like. And then I guarantee you, because I've met people like this in real life before, I guarantee you that they go to their little friends and they bash, men, boys, guys, whatever, because, they're trash or they're garbage or whatever, there's no such thing as a good man anymore, blah, 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 like all that kind of stuff. And they think that just because they are girls and that they were raised as girls, that they automatically have, they think they have it, but they ain't got it, but they think they have it. And so they're like, I don't understand why all these horrible dudes are keep wasting my time, you know? And they don't realize that they are not giving off, their sort of aura. I don't believe in auras, but if I did, their sort of aura is not giving off, an aura of health necessarily, not always. And I'm talking about, like, if it sounds like I'm describing you or someone that you know, I'm probably not. I'm describing a very specific thing that I've seen on to just like, really unattractive people who have, like, they naturally have really unattractive have really attractive features, but are presenting themselves in a really unattractive way, is really more what I'm talking about. And every single one of them, their profile is something really, they're judgmental, and if you're less than 6 feet tall, don't waste my time, little manlet, that kind of thing. And it's like, how do people get away with that? I don't understand. Like, you think you have it, but you don't have it, And I'm not saying that I have it. I'm just trying to be myself, I'm trying to be myself. I'm trying to present myself because I think myself is fine. I think that the way that I know my hair probably looks pretty messy. I haven't fixed it today. So I probably, look disheveled, but as far as, like, I'm doing that on purpose, like that is just the way that I feel today. And so, I came on stream looking like that because that's how I feel. That reflects how I feel right now. And it's just like, whatever, that's fine. I'm not saying that I'm the perfect, it's really not about that so much. It just seems like there's a lot of people that are really disingenuous, and like I said, they think that they got it. They think that they're a catch. Like, they genuinely think that they're like a real catch, and they just aren't. Like, they're just totally deluded. So that was really strange, because for me that feels like, oh, that's a minefield that I now have to navigate. And it really made me not wanna. It made me not. I was like, maybe it's just better to pursue dating and things like that in person, because instead of having to swipe, you can just, like, scan a room and look and be like, oh, I feel like I would get along with that person and that person and that person, and then just, like, go up and talk to them first. But yeah, I don't know. And also, I was really frustrated with myself in a lot of ways, because there was a lot of girls, women, whatever you want to call them, women, probably. I'm just so used to saying girls, but it's I don't think it's cool anymore. I think you're supposed to say women, but it doesn't feel right. That were really attractive, like, genuinely. They're really attractive. They have good style. They have good hair. They don't look. They might wear makeup, but it's, like, tasteful. Everything about them is tasteful. You can tell that like these are the people who do got it, right? And your facial expression makes a huge difference. You know, like your facial expression in the pictures, because that's the window to the soul, right? And so, if you're on one of these apps or whatever, that it makes a huge difference. I really think that was the thing that or made or broke made or break the people that I saw. It was like, okay, like what's their face like? It was like, okay, are they attractive? Yes or no? What is their face conveying? Is their face conveying that this is a emotionally healthy person? Is their face conveying? Is this person fun? Is this person smart? Is this person cool? Is this person nice? Those are all of the things. Those were the next criteria, and in a large portion of the time, I was like, no, this person from their picture seems like they're arrogant. They seem like they're emotionally closed off. They seem like they're narcissistic. They're full of themselves. A lot of girls that seem really full of themselves. Anyway, but sorry, I went off on a tangent. But there was lots of people who didn't look like that. There was lots of women that I was like, wow, she's really attractive. Her facial expression is okay. Sorry, I'm getting a pop-up. I've never seen this kind of pop-up before. And it's gone. Their facial expression's okay. Their clothes are really good. They're tasteful. What they're doing up here is good. Hair, makeup, all that stuff. Very tasteful. And they're like a 6 or 7 of attractiveness or above, and that was really refreshing to see that. But a lot of the time I was still like, she has it all as far as I can tell, but then she's just like not my type. And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. We don't have time for types. Like why? But it's not something that I feel like I can control. I was watching last night with my parents. We watched the new James Bond movie. And I think a really good example of what I'm talking about is that that movie is full of attractive women, and the one woman that I actually found attractive was Ana de Armas. Everybody else I was like, whatever. I was like totally, like they were attractive, but no way. Like absolutely no way. Leah Seydoux, I think is her name. She's in it. She's very attractive. But she would be a great example of just like a physically beautiful woman who I do find attractive, but like at least her character in the thing couldn't be more bland. Absolutely couldn't be more bland. To the point that you almost wonder if people who make movies like this are misogynistic. It's like, do these people want women in general to seem bland? Because like that is such a common thing that happens in movies where they're like, let's get the most attractive woman on screen, and she's just the most bland person. She might as well be a statue. She has no humanity at all. Apart from just like a few miscellaneous like crying scenes. which is it's hard to feel sympathy for someone if they were super bland and didn't feel like a real person to begin with. Now, if I was talking to Leah Seydoux in real life and she just started crying, I would probably be very sad. But through a TV screen, there's just nothing. I didn't feel a thing. And then Anna de Armas's character shows up, and I was like, this is such a breath of fresh air for this movie. Because the movie, the recent Bond movie, say what you will about it, the whole thing was kind of pretty bland in my opinion. There was a couple of cool action scenes, but Anna de Armas's character was easily the best part, and she's in it for like 4 minutes. Easily the best part of that movie. And the only part that I actually enjoyed. And then she just gone. And I was like, wow, thanks for that, you morons. You absolute idiots. But was it Sam Mendes who made those movies? I've lost all faith in him as a filmmaker from having watched those James Bond movies. The Skyfall was really good. I really liked Skyfall. But the other two that came afterwards, wow. Couldn't be more bland. Very, very pretentious in the way that they were made and shot, and oh boy, very pretentious, not at all entertaining or fun in any way, except for that 1 4-minute stretch where Anna de Armas is in it and then she vanishes. Like a puff of smoke, she's just gone, and you think like, oh wow, she was so much fun, she has to come back, right? No. But, that's a really good example of like who is my type. And it's not like, she's super popular. Anna de Armas is super popular. She is like the girl right now. So it's not like I have a really weird type. I don't have a really weird type. She's super popular, both as an actress and also as a crush. And I'm in both of those categories. But like that's a great example of somebody who I would love to date if they were real, and not in Hollywood. Like if knew her in real life, I mean. And I wouldn't even say, the women on the dating apps that I was coming across weren't even as attractive as Leah Seydoux. But even if they were, I'd still be probably swiping left. Because there's just something I don't know what it is, but just not for me. Not my type. But it was something that I found very frustrating. It was like, why can't these people be my type? Like, why is my brain limiting me on my options? I really don't need this. I need as many options as I can have. Why are you limiting me? And it was really an internal battle. Like, you would not, it's, I don't know if anybody else has had this experience. I'm sure they have, of swiping through a dating app and just being just like morbidly depressed afterwards, and just being like, wow, I don't know what it is exactly psychologically that's happening there, but it's just like very much a internal battle going on, just really a war. It's really like a lot, like an introspective war of like, what do I want out of life? What do I want out of a partner? I got to the end and I was like, listen, if I never find a decent partner, I'm just going to have to be okay with that. It is like sort of where I left it off. It was very pessimistic. Um, because that was the feeling that I got. Because then, the women that I did swipe right on, I was like, there's no way they're gonna like me because look at me, you know. I saw now. Not only am I having this internal war about like all of these people that are just extremely bizarre, the humans out there, like what is happening? Um, but then on top of that, I was like, well, who do I think do I think that I'm a catch? Like it's like, but I think, everybody deserves somebody. So, in a sense, it's not about that, right? But I started having this conversation of like, is it better to settle? Because I've had so many people. Hold on, I need to drink more sugar. Guys, I think the sugar did a lot. There's no table over here anymore. There used to be another desk here. It's gone. What am I supposed to do with my cup? What was I talking about? But I've had so many people come up to me in my life, and I've talked about girls with tons of people, and almost everybody comes to the same conclusion, and they're just like, you're just too picky. They're like, you're just too picky. You're just too picky. I've heard that so many times, and you know what? It's actually been pretty damaging to hear that. Almost every time I've heard it, it's been pretty damaging to hear that. I'm not sure I can explain why, but like a big part of it is like, well, do I want to settle? Like that should be like, now that I'm a little older and I have a little bit more, experience. I have a better toolkit now for how to talk to people. I would say something along the lines of like, what? So you want me to settle? Is that what you're saying? Because that's essentially what they're saying. Because I'm not picky, is the thing. I almost wonder if this is a libido issue, right? But that's not the same thing as being picky. Like, I don't know what they think. They're saying like, you're too picky. Like, what do you mean picky? What does that mean? I'm only attracted to the people that I'm attracted to. If I'm not attracted to them, then there's no future there. It's not like there's 10 girls that are attractive and I'm whittling them. I'm not looking at a list of 10 people and whittling down the list by overthinking about it. There's no list. There is just no list. There's no options, because there's just like, if I had a list of 10, that would be a field day. I would go with any of the 10, So no, I'm not picky. If I had a list of 10 people that were 10 options, I'd be thrilled. I wouldn't whittle any of them off of the list. But I think maybe from the outside it looks like I'm overthinking and whittling people off the list. But that's not how I work. That's not what I'm doing. There is just no list. I just like, I don't know what it is about me exactly, but It's also, I think, dealing with. I have a hard time being attracted to someone who is a complete stranger. So I think that's also part of it. I wouldn't say that I'm like full. There's such a thing as a demisexual. I don't think I'm one of those people. Not that there's anything wrong with being one of those people. I don't really think I am that. But maybe I am. Maybe a little bit. You know? Maybe a little bit. Maybe I should look into that. But I don't really. I mean, I can still experience, some level of attraction towards someone I've never met before, but not very often. So typically it has to be someone who I've been around, even if it's just someone who I've seen every day, So like that, like most of the crushes that I've ever had in my entire life have just been people that I see over and over again, which is probably the reason why I always seem to fall for the people who run the desk at like whatever establishment I go to, like the barista or whoever. That's happened to me a lot. That's interesting. I'm not sure if I've ever thought about that before, but that's probably why that happens so frequently. But it can be as something like that, just as long as they're not like a complete stranger. But it makes swiping through a dating app really hard, because you have to because then at that point I'm like, how, I told my therapist this. I was like, how am I supposed to be interested in someone through a picture? It's just a picture. Like I'm not, that's not what I'm into, much more, physical, like face to face, like in person is my thing. So, that makes it a lot harder when you have to conduct everything through, your smartphone, and it just, especially with COVID, it just makes everything so much more difficult. But I would be, perfectly willing to meet people in person, but I don't know, like, where people hang out. Like, in my region. I don't know where people hang out. I will say this, though. If everybody in my area is as ugly as they are on the app, my self-esteem just went way up. Because before I was like, oh, I'm just kind of a shy person in general, believe it or not, so sometimes I get in my head about that stuff, like, oh, I can't go, like, what if they don't like my clothes, what if they don't like my face, what if my facial hair looks funny, what if my hair looks funny. And after having gone through that, I expect everybody to look like a movie star. So after having gone through that and just seeing like, wow, man, if that's what Greenville looks like, then sheesh, I don't know what I was worried about. I ain't got nothing to worry about. Y'all are ugly out there. Y'all are ugly. And that's why I think that, like, as I've talked about this on stream before, is that, like, in my lifetime, I would love to see poverty eliminated in America, or worldwide if possible. And even beyond that, like, I would love to see ugliness eradicated, because that's kind of been like my focus lately. I've been, especially after the app, I've been looking at people And I'm just like, that person is ugly. I don't know why they're ugly. I couldn't tell you why. If I like just like you can look at a car like a Honda Accord. Let's assume for a second that you think Honda Accords are ugly. You can look at a Honda Accord and you can think like, if you change this, and this about that Honda, you can make it look good. I've been doing that with people's faces recently. It's like, that person's ugly. What would you have to change in order to make them not ugly anymore? And it's a really interesting exercise. And it's something that I've kind of low-key been doing for years now. And it's interesting sort of the direction that it's led me. Like, one of the gifts that I got for Christmas was one of these Jazzercise things. You might have seen them around. It's one of those things that you put in your mouth and you like bite it, and it's supposed to like make your jaw better. It's supposed to like make your whole face look better. And the first dozen times that I saw the advertisements for that, I was like, who's buying this? I was like, that's so stupid. Who is falling for that? And then, I started to like do research about the human jaw and comparing them to monkey jaws, and just like seeing how the way that the skull is shaped and the way that the face is shaped and how it changes depending on the lifestyle of the animal. And you obviously you notice patterns because monkeys and humans have very similar face shapes, and anatomy just in general. And you start to notice like, oh, one of the reasons why that person over there is ugly is because their face is not shaped correctly. They need Jazzercise. Because one of the things that is a big difference, like when you compare, like, okay, here's a monkey skull and here's a human skull. A monkey skull, they're little tiny things, and they eat big things that are way too big for their head, and they have to bite really hard on like nuts and walnuts and just whatever it is that monkeys eat. Bone. And you start to see like, oh, the structure of like a monkey skull. They have these muscles in their on the outside of their skull and along here that allows them to bite very hard. And then you can even look at something like a pit bull or like a breed of dog that has been specifically bred to have a powerful jaw, and how their anatomy is different from this other breed that doesn't have a powerful jaw. And so you start to see these patterns amongst like a large group of animals, and humans are the same way. And so humans have very, very, very weak jaws in general compared to other animals. But you can still tell a really big difference between a person who has a powerful jaw and someone who does not. And the people who have powerful jaws are more often than not considered attractive. And the people who do not are more often than not considered unattractive. And, that's been a considerable step forward in my fight to understand ugliness and why ugliness exists and where it comes from and how you can change it or prevent it. Sort of this mental exercise that treats ugliness like it's a disease. And, it's been fascinating to me because I'm like, why are certain people ugly and certain people not? You would think that if half of the population was ugly and half of the population was extremely attractive, that eventually the ugly half would stop existing. Because they're too ugly to get dates or girlfriends and procreate, right? So why does it exist at all, is the question. Well, a big part of understanding that question is that, people have weaker and weaker jaws than they used to. And my theory is that, the weaker that your jaw becomes, the more that, other parts of your head grow out of control. There must be something about the way that the anatomy of the jaw, the way that the anatomy of the muscles in your head and on your skull, the muscles that are in your face that come down into the cheekbone area and then come down here, must, as you grow from, preteen to adolescent to then an adult, whatever you were doing that was making your jaw stronger, my personal theory is that it must be controlling the way that the rest of your head grows. And so sometimes you'll just end up with people who just have giant foreheads, absolutely giant foreheads, and really weak jaws, and, just really strange facial shapes that don't make any sense. And it just looked like, somehow along the way somewhere their skull just grew out of control. And so it makes me think, as you progress from childhood to adolescence to older, the motion of the jaw, the muscles in your skull, all of that complex that exists in here must have almost an orthodontic effect on the way that your skull shapes itself as it grows. That your body is expecting the wear and tear of your lifestyle on your jaw in the form of chewing, biting, tough foods, steak, whatever it is that takes a lot of, jaw power. And that your body is expecting that, and when you deprive your body of that and you basically just do nothing but eat, mush and spam as you grow, that your face then grows out of control. Because you don't have that limiting factor of the pressure of the muscles working to keep your skull in the proper shape. Because if you look at, any skull especially if you go back to like caveman times with the Cro-Magnon skulls. You know, they're shaped in a very specific way. And that specific shape also tends to very closely overlap with the kinds of faces that we consider to be attractive faces. So I was like, I need to test this out. I need to get a Jazzercise kit. You know, I need to test this out. Can I... It would make sense, in my personal opinion, that, you know, it's not too late. Even though I'm 25, if I was 45, I still don't think it would be too late. I'd be like, if this makes sense, if that's actually what you need in order to have a healthy jaw, then if I put my jaw and my face and my skull through the ringer, if I put it through that process, then it wouldn't, in my opinion, make sense for it to just fail. You know, when you lift weights, you get stronger, your muscles get stronger, your bones get stronger. And if you actually exercise your face, you know, jaw, it's the whole jaw complex. It starts here, and then it goes up, and it actually rings your skull, basically your entire skull. And it goes, all of that goes through your cheekbone right here. They call this the zygomatic arch, because there's a hole here that your muscles go through, your jaw muscles go through, and then fan out like a fan all along your head here. So if your head is the wrong shape, you can't chew as well. Because it's huge. It's connected. This whole area is connected with jaw muscle. And so, you know, if you have a tiny little jaw and a gigantic head, you can't chew properly. You actually can't chew. Physically, you cannot chew properly. And I would imagine that people who have a face shape and a head shape like that probably have jaw problems, because if you do any chewing, which you probably don't, because if you did, you probably would have a normal shaped face and head, but if you do a little bit of chewing, you're going to get that joint. It's a floating joint. I think they call it a floating hinge. It's very sensitive, even though the jaw is very powerful. The muscularity of the jaw is very powerful. This joint right here is a floating joint, I guess. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know what that is. It's probably not scientific. But it's very sensitive. That's why people get TMJ. It's the temporal mandibular joint, I think, maybe, is what it's called. With TMJ, you're gonna get jaw problems, man. You're gonna get problems with that hinge, because like if your jaw is too small and your head is too big, it's gonna be pulling on that hinge. It's gonna be, you know, if your head is big and your jaw is small, all of those muscles are gonna come down to a small point, and then when you chew, the muscles pull straight up and down like this. And if your jaw is too shallow, is too thin, it's going to be pulling out on that part of your jaw. It's going to be applying a significant amount of torque. If you've got, you know, an alien head shape where you've got a big head and a small jaw, it's going to be applying a significant amount of torque to the bone, your jaw bone itself, which is not only extremely inefficient, but also probably leads to injury. You can't chew properly that way. So if you chewed every day over time, actually put your head and your jaw through the process of, the action of chewing, of biting, whatever it is that gets your jaw working, you might injure yourself because we've already mentioned, it's not working properly. So you might injure yourself, but you also might grow your face and head to match. It's going to, because of that torque that's being applied, probably. Listen, I've done the Jazzercise thing already. I don't think that. Look at the way my head is shaped. I don't. I have a little bit of a weaker jaw than I would like, and maybe like a little bit of a bigger head than I would. I don't know. But for the most part, like, it's okay. I could look a lot worse. But I did the Jazzercise thing. I did the lowest level, the easiest level. It was very uncomfortable. Even with my face being shaped the way that it is, it was very uncomfortable, borderline painful on the easiest setting. And it was, and on, to their credit, on the box they say, like, go slow. This hasn't been approved by any FDA or any government agency, this product. So go slowly, be very careful with it. It's a new thing, right? Who knows if it even works? I don't even know if it works yet. But even me, I think I have an okay shaped skull already. I would like it to be a little better, which is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it was already very uncomfortable, even on the lowest setting, on the lowest level, very uncomfortable. And I was like, geez, like what happens if you are one of those people with like a giant alien head and like a really like it's going to be borderline impossible for you, I would think, right? Logically. I've been complimented on my jaw before. I've had girls compliment me on it before. I think maybe they. Ever since I've gained weight, it's been less of a thing. I have more of a baby face now than I used to. But before I gained weight, I got more compliments back then. And even with that, it didn't matter. It still was really uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. And so I was like, oh, everything makes sense now. There's a reason why your skull is meant to be shaped in a very particular way, and there is a reason why we associate that with attractiveness. Because it was tough, man. And I can't imagine if you have a completely lopsided head, if you look like an alien. I can't imagine what that would do. But it was like all the way through here, like especially along here, like around my ear, up here, going into my forehead where it connects right here, because it connects right here. It's raised slightly. It was hurting through here. It was hurting along here. It was hurting down here. And I mean hurting after a while. Not at first, but after a while. It was hurting, and I stopped. When it started to hurt, I stopped. And then it was like I thought that I had a relatively decently shaped face already, and it was like, wow. So that was eye opening. I was like, oh, everything makes sense now. And I've seen people try to explain this online. Some people have said, "Holy, hello, thank you for the follow. You scared me." Some people have said that that the reason why is because the food that we eat in an industrialized society is too soft. We're not chewing meat and whatever else, nuts and raw vegetables and raw potatoes and the kinds of things that people would have been eating in a pre-industrialized society. We're not doing that kind of thing anymore. And that is very true, because like the more industrialized we get, the more that we do things like refine like bread and rice and basically anything that you can think of has become softer and softer and softer. Hi, Chirag Bhatia. What's up? I had to put my glasses on so I could see you. Thank you for the follow. What was I talking about? Everything in a pre-industrialized society, everything that we did, even like rice, was way tougher. Like way tougher. And we've just, because of human nature, we've just made everything softer and softer and softer. And that's the reason why people don't get the the jaw thing. But like people told me growing up, if they were like, if you want a good jaw, if you want to look good, if you want to look attractive, if you want to look like a model, you gotta chew gum, is what people said. You gotta chew gum. I never believed them though, because it sounds just like an urban myth. It sounds like a wives' tale, an old wives' tale. But I think it's true. I think it turns out it was true. Although gum is not particularly tough either. Gum is, it's rubber, but it's also, I think it's rubber. It's rubbery. I'm not sure if it's quite good enough though, because it's kind of soft. But yeah, like that's literally it. Like that is a big part. Like there's still, listen, some people just got like really big eyebrows, and that's considered unattractive. I can't explain that part, but I would say, if everybody had the same, if everybody was eating the same food, we would all have the same head shape. And it would probably be, depending on, the more tough that your food would, the more tough that your food is, the more that you would have that jaw, you would have that head, you'd have that face. But there's not a one size fits all, even amongst like people that, like models and movie stars and people that we consider to be attractive, there is no one size fits all head shape, jaw shape, whatever the case is. And so it's not like there's one shape. It's a window of shapes, but they're all, the one thing that they would all have in common would be that they would all be symmetrical, right? And so a big part of what makes your face symmetrical is the chewing, like if someone's got like one eyeball that's higher than the other, or their teeth are crooked, or their mouth is too small, or this or that, the reason why we associate that with unattractiveness is because of what I just explained. Because of, when you chew, the muscles on your face pull on the jaw, and they shape it in the correct way. Because, it's I don't know if you call it centrifugal force. Is it centrifugal force? Would be pulling on the entire head equally. Because you chew on one side, and then you go to the other side, and then you go to the other side, and then you go back and forth. Every animal does that. And humans do it too. You go back and forth, and because you want to keep your teeth safe, or whatever, you want to wear down both sets of teeth equally, so you go from one to the next to the next to the next to the next, which causes your face to grow in symmetrically. That's how that works. Because if your face is asymmetrical, you will begin to pull on one side harder than the other. Also, speaking of that, the other reason why I know that this probably works, the Jazzercise thing, it's really hot. I roll up my sleeve. I'm starting to smell like corn. The reason why I know it works is because one side of my jaw is bigger than the other. And it's because I grind my teeth at night. I don't chew one side, other side, other side. I grind my teeth at night, which incidentally might be the reason why I even had a jaw to begin with. But I grind my teeth at night, every night, and they don't quite line up correctly for some reason, my teeth. They're just slightly lopsided, and so when I clench my teeth, this side works a lot harder. My left side, I'm not sure what the mechanics of that are. I think like this side is a little bit closer to the top teeth, so like the bottom teeth and the top teeth don't have to work very hard in order to clench. But can you see it? I don't know if you can see that or not. But this side has to work harder for some reason. I guess like my jaw is just like ever so slightly crooked like that. So this side has to work harder. Incidentally, this side is my good side because it's not just the muscles. It's not just the muscles. It's the bone. My jaw bone is sharper on this side than it is on this. It's weaker on this side. Like I can very obviously feel a difference. On this side, it comes in a little bit, like my cheekbone is here and my jaw is here. On this side, it still comes in a little bit, but it's way more shallow. It's much more symmetrical. It's almost straight. And that's how I know that this works. It's not the muscle. It's the bone of the jaw. It's the actual bone of it. Which is the reason why I know that this works. I don't know, for all I know, I might have developed it in adolescence, but I didn't notice it until I was probably 23, 24. So I don't know where it came from exactly, but yeah, this is my good side for that exact reason. Because when I clench my teeth, like this side pulls up a little, because doesn't line up correctly. And I clench my teeth at night pretty frequently. So I know it works. Or at the very least, the amount of pressure that you place on your jaw affects the way that it grows. So it's probably a good idea, speaking of that, it's probably a good idea for me to even it out so that, my head doesn't, my brain doesn't, slip out of my skull or something. Just something just, goes wrong. Something just, goes wrong. But I'm fascinated by this concept. But it also, it affects the way that your skull grows, too. I don't remember if I made a big deal. If you clench your teeth, you can feel it. The muscles bulge on the sides of your skull. Because for whatever reason, the muscles connect up here. And it's really interesting. But you clench your jaw and the muscle bulges, it connects to pretty much your whole skull. And you can look at pictures of this on the internet, look at like jaw anatomy and the anatomy of the face and the muscles of the face and all that stuff. Like, the muscles connect and they fan out like that, all up and down your skull for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. I guess it's probably just stronger that way because your skull is already, a circle shape. And so, I mean, think about that for a second. Like, the more that you place pressure on your skull, the more that your skull will pull inwards and be circular. So it actually will change the shape of your head also, theoretically. I don't know what it's going to do to me. I'm curious to see what it's going to do to me. I'm a little nervous that I'm going to end up looking like a freak or something. That's not the intended purpose of the experiment, but, I'm a nervous guy. I worry about a lot of stuff. I'm a little nervous that's what it's going to turn out as. I'm going to end up looking like a freak. But I think people with strong jaws usually look better for it, right? I feel like very rarely does a person look worse because of a good jaw. So that would be, that's my goal at the very least. That's my goal is to have the jaw / skull that I was meant to have. And in order to do, but see, the weird thing is like, even though like the bone of your jaw is probably going to of my jaw is probably going to change, I wouldn't think that your skull would change. So I'm very curious about that. I wouldn't think that your skull would change in adulthood, because then it might squish your brain. Am I going to squish my brain? Maybe it does squish your brain. Maybe I shouldn't be telling people this. But, your brain is in here. The reason why your skull is shaped the way that it's shaped is because your brain is in here, because it needs a place to live. And the muscles of your jaw just so happen to also be in that same area. So as your brain gets bigger, your skull gets bigger. Those muscles up here have to work harder. Because their surface area is growing, and they get spread more and more thin. And then you chew, and then those thin muscles become stronger, which will then, for efficiency's sake, will pull even more on this area of your jaw. So the more that you chew, the more that your skull is going to be A, circular shaped, and B, is going to be limited to an extent by the force of the muscle pulling down on the side of the skull. And I think I don't know if it fully connects at the sagittal keel, is what this is called, sagittal keel. I don't know if it, or maybe it's the sagittal suture. I don't know if it fully connects all the way up here, but you can feel it connect like right about here. And so it's going to, in a very symmetrical way, it's going to pull on your skull, and it's going to probably make your skull very circular in shape. Not that that's a big deal. It's not a big deal. But that's just something that's going to happen. But I would say that even though that is a limiting factor for the way that your skull is shaped and the size that your skull can get, I would imagine that anatomically speaking, as you grow, your brain is probably going to take precedence over that. If your brain has to be a certain size in order for you to function as a human, then that's probably going to take precedence over jaw strength. And then the larger that your brain is, the larger that your jaw will have to become in order to compensate. Because the larger your brain is, the larger your skull will be. The larger your brain is, the larger your brain case will be, the larger that your skull will probably have to be. And then the more stretched thin those muscles that connect up here will also be. Which means that, if you put pressure on those muscles and force them to grow, it's going to also make these muscles in here work harder, the bones in here work harder, and pull them outwards. And you're going to end up with a stronger jaw. So the bigger the bigger your brain is, the stronger your jaw is. And what that means, that doesn't mean that smart people end up with stronger jaws. Typically, brain size is more correlated with the size of the animal. So, I think that's the reason why men have stronger jaws than women do, because women are smaller, and so the way that the brain works is that, like, the animal with the largest brain is the blue whale. The smartest animal is not the one with the largest brain, because the blue whale has the largest brain. It's the largest animal. So that's not that doesn't correlate with intelligence, although intelligence does cause your brain to grow bigger. It's more about the size of your brain versus the size of your body. And humans have the biggest, by far. Humans have by far the biggest brain compared to the rest of their body. So that's part of how we know that we have, the intelligence that we do. But so that basically what that means is, because men are larger physically than women and have more mass, that means that we need a bigger brain in order to sort of run, for whatever reason. I'm not even sure if they really know why this happens, but for whatever reason you need it in order to run the body, and so that means that men have bigger brains than women. It doesn't mean that they're smarter. It just, that's the reason why. And then because of that, you have a bigger skull, and then you're going to have a bigger jaw. And so that's, I guess, the reason why men have stronger jaws than women. Is just because of that. So that's basically the whole story. But I guarantee you there are still people out there in the world with perfect jaws, perfect skull shape, and they still be ugly. And I ain't know why. I couldn't tell you why. Couldn't tell you. I would imagine that, like, the more, because sometimes you'll see someone and you're like, that person is super ugly, and it's because their eyebrows are huge. And I would imagine maybe that somebody with huge eyebrows maybe was supposed to have a beard to sort of, like, offset the giant eyebrows. That could be part of it. Typically men have giant eyebrows and women have thinner eyebrows, but sometimes you'll see a woman with huge eyebrows. Yeah, I don't know why. Where'd you get those eyebrows from? Who knows? And even that could just be like, maybe she was supposed to have more of a jaw, and that's like the eyebrows are too big because, proportionally speaking, they're too big, supposed to have more jaw to compensate for that, so that you get like an even look. Um, but there's like a million different reasons why a person it looks ugly. Some of them, completely out of that person's control. Some of them, not so much. I would say maybe most of them, especially with the introduction of the Jazzercise concept. Not sponsored by Jazzercise, by the way. The Jazzercise. I don't even know if it works for sure yet. But now that I've introduced you to that concept, there's a lot that you have in control over. So if you've got a weak jaw or if you've got a big head, that's the key. That's the key. Gave you the key. Now you can fix that. Maybe if it works, because I don't know if it works. I can't make any promises. But I don't know why. Some people are just ugly looking, and I don't know why. I couldn't even tell you. Like what is it about this person that makes him look not so good? And that stuff is, if you have to explain it, I guess it's that concept of genetic drift, which I've heard of, and I don't fully understand what it is exactly, but like my limited understanding is that it's just you get a large enough population and people's genes are going to kind of float away. If you get a large enough population and people are making babies and all that kind of stuff, people's facial features are just going to get wonkier and wonkier. As long as there's no direct natural selection consequences, you're gonna get someone like Anya Taylor-Joy, whose eyes, by the way, absolutely gorgeous woman, absolutely gorgeous, but her eyes are super far apart. And it's baffling. It's like, why? What happened there? Luckily for her, she's still absolutely gorgeous. Definitely a major crush situation with like 95% of dudes who have seen her in a movie. But still a very different face. She's not ugly though. That's the thing, is that she's not ugly. I don't know. That's really, again, but it's that genetic drift. That and also, the amount of human beings that we have on the planet. We have experienced a pretty significant genetic bottleneck, considering how many extra people we've got compared to 500 years ago. We've experienced a very significant genetic bottleneck, which is almost never good. But I don't know how that translates to facial features necessarily. But, you've got people like me. Again, this isn't meant to be like a pity party or anything like that. But in a lot of my pictures, I was looking through some old pictures recently, and I noticed that in a lot of my pictures, my eyebrows just like vanish. I have eyebrows. I don't know if you can see them. It depends on the lighting. I've got eyebrows. Sometimes they just vanish, depending on the lighting. And it makes my face look completely different, depending on just like little things like the light of the room. My face will look completely different. And then like not only do my eyebrows vanish, but like my eyelashes, I frequently, because I don't have like super strong lashes, I think they're okay, but you got to get like up close to really see them, I think. And they're sort of like a light brown, I think, sort of blonde, sort of light brown, and so because of that, they vanish. Um, in certain light, typically like bright light, is what does it. Um, and I was thinking about that recently. I was like, how does that make sense? Because eyebrows are really important. The reason why we associate eyebrows with ugliness, a lack of eyebrows with ugliness, is because eyebrows are very important. They're very important for defining a shape or the shape of your face. And communicating emotion. So if somebody has absolutely no eyebrows and has absolutely no eyelashes, it's actually a lot more difficult to tell what emotions they're feeling. Because typically you can just look at them at like a glance. Like if you've got like really dark eyebrows, you can look at somebody's facial expression and know pretty quickly what face that they're communicating. If someone's mad, their brow comes together. If they're sad, whatever the case is, we all intrinsically understand that because we've all drawn smiley faces during school. If you want to make a face look like an angry face, you give it angry eyebrows. Sad face, you give it sad eyebrows, like all that stuff. So we all intrinsically know that. So because of that, eyebrows are very important. And when they're missing on a person, it's like, it's jarring. And we associate that with ugliness most of the time. But then you got people like me that for some reason, my eyebrows just, they're there, but they're almost the same color as my skin in a lot of ways. So sometimes they just disappear. And you can't see them. And that hurts the look of my face. But the more I thought about it, I was like, well, it's because they're blonde. Maybe if I had because I've seen people with blonde eyebrows and eyelashes, if they have a tan, usually that helps a lot, to the point that it basically fixes the problem. So it's like, okay, well maybe if I had a tan, maybe that would be enough. I think my eyebrows and my eyelashes are just dark. They're not totally blonde, they're just dark enough that, you can see them pretty well for the most part. But some lighting situations, gone. I look like a completely different person because they're just like whoosh, gone. Same thing with my beard too. My beard is actually, it's not super full. It's not the fullest beard, but it doesn't photograph very well because it's light. It's blonde and it's light red. And maybe a little bit of brown. So it doesn't photograph very well. I think it looks better in person, but like I said, it doesn't photograph very well because it has the same problem. Like in some lighting situations, like it's just it's just gone, and it's like, you've got to be kidding me. Like that stuff is crucial. So it's definitely a frustration, and it's the kind of thing that you just have to ignore. Otherwise, it would drive you crazy if you thought about it all the time. But yeah, it happens. But that's something that I've noticed about myself, and my face shape is the jaw thing, or not the jaw thing, the eyebrows thing. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm also wondering if We talked about the. By the way, doing the jaw exercises, I'm pretty sure it makes your cheekbones bigger also, because your jaw connects to your cheekbones because it brings the jaw forward. When you chew, especially. Because you're not just chewing straight up and down, you're kind of going back and forth and doing all stuff. So there are a lot of muscles that you can feel them too, that connect through here. And so, that'll change those too. Hopefully not too much, because I've seen some people with really big cheekbones and boy, it doesn't look super great sometimes. So hopefully it doesn't change that too much. But it's naturally, if you put your body through the ringer, naturally it's going to become more symmetrical, because symmetrical is equal to strength. So if your body has the proper strength, it'll become more symmetrical naturally. If your skull has the proper strength, it'll be more symmetrical. If your teeth are asymmetrical, that means that they have less strength. If you've got crooked teeth, it makes it a lot more difficult to bite things and chew things. Particularly the front teeth. So sometimes I see British people that have really bad teeth, and I'm like, how do you eat? That must be every single time you eat, that must be on your mind. Because if you bite into anything, you can't bite an apple. I know you can't bite an apple. It's what do you do if you have to eat an apple? Just bash it against the table and make it mush so then you can eat it? Okay, sure, that's possible, but that's something that you'd have to deal with every single time. And sometimes people are what, teeth are just a cosmetic issue. And it's nothing is just a cosmetic issue. There's always strings, so that's anyway. But symmetry in your body is strength. For some reason, I'm not entirely sure why. The teeth one's obvious. The face muscles / jaw one, also obvious. I was saying I wonder if it has to do with your jaw, or stupid mother, has to do with your brow. This is called the brow ridge. This part right here where your eyebrows are, that bone right here, plays a big part in what your face is shaped like. Some people have stronger ones, some people have less. It's actually not. I think that in particular doesn't really have a huge impact on attractiveness. But I think it has a little bit of an impact, but it's maybe not a huge one. But I've noticed that typically the stronger your jaw is, the more that your skull is sort of receded back from the brow, because the muscles, I guess they just kind of connect up here in a specific way that sort of pulls the forehead back from the brow and makes your head slope more. So for some reason, the more that you have a sloped forehead, the more jaw strength potential there is. And you can see it. You can see that very clearly in gorillas, for example, because they have extremely powerful jaws, some of the most powerful in the entire animal kingdom, especially for their size. They're probably approaching elephant levels. Man, maybe not. very, very strong jaws. Um, and you can see the muscles can, obviously this part is huge, but the muscle goes up and connects, and they've got like their brow is completely separate from the rest of their head, and the muscle that connects here kind of goes up and around the brow like a rubber band. And we as humans, we don't need that kind of jaw strength, not even close. Something like a tenth, maybe less, of raw jaw strength compared to a gorilla, maybe less than a tenth. But the anatomy is very much the same, very, very similar. So that's why you sort of have that like slope. The stronger the jaw is, the more you have like sort of a slope. But I don't know, if you end up with like a really big bulging forehead, I don't know how that changes your jaw strength, because I don't think you can undo that. So, you're definitely forcing your jaw to fight uphill, essentially. At that point, if you've already got that skull shape and it's, locked in and it's not changing. So I would be interested to see how that affects anatomy. Very interested. What else can we talk about? I'm getting very thirsty. I haven't been drinking enough. There's other stuff about being ugly. I don't know what it is. Sometimes I look at a person's face and I'm like, I don't understand how that person looks like that. Like, whether they're ugly or not. Like, I'll just look at a person's face and I'll be like, what do you do to... Like, if I wanted to make that person attractive, I have no idea what I would do. Like, if you were a painter and they were like, paint this person, now make them attractive. No idea how I would do. There's quite a few. Like, sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, their eyes need to be like this. You just kind of tweak stuff. Sometimes it's like, I have no clue. I don't know why they look like that. I don't know what is about their face. There are some people that have really shallow eye pits. Like, if I push my fingers into my eyeballs, there's this like ring of bone that goes around my eyes, and then there's the brow ridge on top, but like also on pretty much every side except for right here, they're relatively deep set. But some people don't have that at all. Their eyes are like almost like floating out of their head. And there's no real reason for that. No clear reason, at least, why their eyes are shaped that way. And of course, you know, some people are just fat. Some people are just fat. Some people are just overweight. Which is, you know, that's your life. And I've certainly struggled with weight. I am currently pretty chub. So there's no judgment. But it definitely has an effect on the way other people perceive you, at least in your realm of attractiveness. Especially since it tends to make your facial features softer, which is not always a good thing. Sometimes it's kind of a good thing, though, but not always. Some people's faces are just too bony. Some people could be attractive, but their faces are so bony. You know, like models and usually models. It's like, what? Like, that's what? So that can happen too. But I couldn't tell you why certain people have certain traits and what makes them, you know. I don't always know. I don't always know. Sometimes it's a complete mystery. And I'll do more research and I'll get back to you. I'm getting very tired. I think I need food. It's almost 2 o'clock. I need real food. I need a real meal. So, I'm heading out. Get lost, you losers.